Russia is seeking the withdrawal of NATO forces and weapons from Romania and Bulgaria as part of its sweeping security demands from the US-led alliance. Romania and Bulgaria slammed Russia's demand to remove alliance troops from both countries as unacceptable. Russia demands written responses from the United States on its proposed security guarantees, which include the withdrawal of NATO's infrastructure from Eastern European countries that became members of the Western military bloc after 1997. Russian Foreign Ministry said, it was deliberately set forth with utmost clarity to avoid any ambiguity. We are talking about the withdrawal of foreign forces, equipment, and weapons, as well as taking other steps to return to the setup we had in 1997 in non-NATO countries. This includes Bulgaria and Romania. NATO members Romania and Bulgaria slammed Russia's demand to remove alliance troops from both countries as unacceptable, with each arguing that the Kremlin has no right to interfere in the foreign policy decisions of other sovereign states. The comments from both countries came just hours after Russia's foreign ministry confirmed its demand for NATO to pull back troops from parts of Eastern Europe including Bulgaria and Romania. The two countries are located on the Black Sea, which analysts believe Moscow sees as an important geostrategic buffer zone between itself and Europe. Romania's Ministry of Foreign Affairs said in a statement such a demand is unacceptable and cannot be negotiated. Bulgaria's Ministry of Foreign Affairs urged Moscow to show respect to the foreign policy choice consciously made by Bulgaria. Prime Minister Kirill Petkov said, Bulgaria is discussing options for reacting to tensions between Russia and NATO. We continue to say in a clear tone that the de-escalation of tensions is a top priority for Bulgaria. There are no two categories of NATO members, and we are all equal. It is important for small countries like Bulgaria to have the power to decide their own destiny, their membership, and what is happening on their territory. Bulgarian sovereignty is above everything. Additionally, Bulgaria's ambassador to the United Kingdom, Murin Rakov, said the Kremlin's demand is an expression of contempt for the sovereign rights of Bulgaria to choose the sources of guarantees for national security. In its statement, Romania said the NATO military presence in Eastern Europe is a strictly defensive reaction to the increasingly aggressive behavior of the Russian Federation, which started in 2014, when the Ukrainian territory of Crimea was illegally occupied by Russia. This behavior continues to intensify in the present, despite NATO's attempts to engage in constructive dialogue. Similarly, NATO rejected Russian demands to withdraw its forces from Romania and Bulgaria as diplomatic efforts continued in an effort to prevent a war in Europe after Russia amassed tens of thousands of troops near Ukraine's borders. NATO spokesperson Ona Lungescu said, NATO will not renounce our ability to protect and defend each other, including with the presence of troops in the eastern part of the alliance. We reject any idea of spheres of influence in Europe. We will always respond to any deterioration of our security environment, including through strengthening our collective defense. On the other side, Bulgarian Defense Minister Stefan Yarnev said new F-35 fighter jets from the Netherlands Air Force and Spanish Air Force are to assist in guarding Bulgaria's airspace. Although it has been a regular practice for NATO-allied aircraft to help guard Bulgaria's airspace in recent years, given the country's shortfall in fighter jets pending delivery of the F-16 jets it has ordered, Minister Yarnev was answering questions in the context of the tensions on NATO's eastern flank, given concerns about possible further Russian aggression against Ukraine. He said, "We know very well what the real state of the armed forces is and that there are certain shortcomings. People suffer from war, no one wants it, but it is our responsibility to take measures and be prepared for it. The Bulgarian army must maintain readiness, thus ensuring the sovereignty and territorial integrity of the country. Our army can react to the development of negative a scenario in relation to Ukraine and Russia." Dutch Defense Minister Kajsa Ollongren told the country's parliament that there was a worrying Russian troops buildup on the border with Ukraine and Russia was behaving more and more aggressively, which was why NATO was strengthening its deterrence and defense. The aircraft would carry out quick reaction tasks from Bulgaria. They could be deployed immediately to intercept unknown aircraft over the NATO treaty area, the statement said. The United States and its NATO allies have repeatedly warned Russia any movement of its troops into Ukrainian territory would be met with what U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken called a severe and united response. Russian President Vladimir Putin has argued in recent weeks that his country is the aggrieved party, and is responding to NATO's cooperation with Ukraine and the alliance's eastward expansion since the fall of the Soviet Union, which Russia views as an existential security threat. Diplomats from all sides have been attempting to negotiate a peaceful settlement, though one of Russia's core demands, that NATO withdraws foreign military forces and equipment from members of the alliance who joined after 1997, was quickly deemed a non-starter by Western diplomats. NATO Secretary-General Jens Stoltenberg said, "NATO allies are ready to engage in dialogue with Russia, but we will not compromise on core principles. We will not compromise on the sovereignty and territorial integrity of every nation in Europe, and we will not compromise on the right for all countries to choose their own path, including what kind of security arrangements they want to be part of, and will not compromise on the right for allies to protect and defend each other." Russia and NATO have been at loggerheads since late last year when the Kremlin deployed an estimated 100,000 troops to its border with Ukraine. That same year, Moscow began supporting a pro-Russian separatist movement in eastern Ukraine that's left thousands dead. The U.S. military has sent the USS Harry S. Truman aircraft carrier strike group to take part in a NATO naval exercise in the Mediterranean amid tensions between the West and Russia, the Pentagon's top spokesperson announced. Neptune Strike 22 exercises, which are set to continue through February, will demonstrate NATO's ability to integrate the high-end maritime strike capabilities of an aircraft carrier strike group to support the deterrence and defense of the alliance, Press Secretary John Kirby told reporters. He added that the strike group, along with several other NATO allies he did not name, will participate in coordinated maritime maneuvers, anti-submarine warfare training, and long-range strike training. Kirby insisted the war games had been long planned, since 2020, and were not in response to the recent Russian military buildup near the Ukrainian border, though the drills are not listed on NATO's website among exercises slated for this year. Secretary of State Antony Blinken, who met with Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov in Geneva in a high-stakes meeting to quell tensions, said he wants to use diplomacy to de-escalate the situation. If that proves impossible, however, and Russia decides to pursue aggression against Ukraine, it will be met with a united, swift, and severe response. Asked whether the scope or location of the Neptune Strike 22 exercises had been altered in any way due to the tension around Ukraine, Kirby directed questions to NATO. He said, "If this scenario has changed over time, I don't have that level of detail, but I would tell you, the exercise itself is not designed against the kinds of scenarios that might happen with respect to Ukraine." Additionally, the top American military commander in Europe wants to reinforce NATO's eastern flank with multinational battle groups in Romania and Bulgaria. General Todd Walters, who serves as NATO's Supreme Allied Commander and head of U.S. European Command, delivered the proposal to Allied military chiefs. He wants contingents in the two Black Sea countries that resemble those already established in the Baltic states and Poland. The 1,500-member battle groups are designed to function as a tripwire deterrent force to potential Russian attack. Adding battle groups in Romania and Bulgaria would be in line with more recent efforts by NATO to bolster its position around the Black Sea, a strategic waterway where Russia has been increasingly assertive. Still, it remains unclear how Walters' plan for battle groups in those countries will be received by alliance states. Within NATO, there is often tension between members in the East, eager for Allied reinforcements and a larger American military presence, and Western European counterparts, like Germany, that are wary of provoking Russia. It is time to share your opinion. Should NATO withdraw from Bulgaria and Romania?